Awesome. I was gonna give folks just one more minute to join us. Yeah, perfect. Okay. We're just giving folks a few more seconds to join us before we get started. Just a reminder to introduce yourself in the chat, name, pronouns, any other information that you would like to share. And I also want to remind people that this session is being recorded. Follow-up material will be sent via email, the recording, the slides, and anything else discussed during this time. Awesome. Okay, I think that might be most folks. So I'm gonna hop in with just the introductions here. So thank you for joining us for the second installation of the Refugee Leadership Development Series. So today's workshop is actually going to be the very last workshop of the Refugee Leadership Development training for the year. If you enjoy this workshop, please make sure to let us know. That way we can continue offering digital skills trainings such as these in the future. And I want to remind people just again that this training is going to be recorded and that follow-up material will be sent. So for folks joining us for their first time, I want to provide some background regarding the Refugee Leadership Development Program. So this program is housed under Opportunity for All within the We All America. So We All America campaign aims to uphold and strengthen our nation's commitment to welcome and protect those seeking freedom, safety, and refuge in the United States. We organize people across religious and cultural differences to build inclusive communities where we all belong. One way that We All America works towards this goal is through the Opportunity for All table. So OFA is a national leadership table that is housed out of We All America and led by diverse refugees and immigrants. OFA is designed to ensure representation and inclusivity of those with lived experience and to shift the narratives of refugees and immigrants to one that reflects their contributions and lived experiences. All right, so now that we've gone over some of those household items, I want to discuss more the purpose of this workshop. So this month's workshop will provide some insight about digital organizing and tools available to refugee and immigrant leaders. Participants will learn how to better elevate their messaging and narrative work about their communities. I also included the agenda on the right side for references as well. So that's what we're gonna be going over. All right. So just introducing myself really fast. My name is Andres Bautista. I use he, they pronouns. I'm the digital communication specialist with We All America. I'm here with my co-facilitators and colleagues, Christian and Minelis. Christian and Minelis, I'm gonna pass it to you. I'm gonna pass it to you, Christian, if you wanna do a little quick intro.
Yeah, hi everybody, welcome. My name is Cristian Solano Cordova. I'm Communications Director here at NPNA. Very excited to have y'all here. And yeah, I'll pass it over to Minelis.
Same thing here. Very excited to share with you and provide some good stuff for you so that you can use our best practices for the best of your communications.
Thank you for that introduction. And I wanted to get us started by getting some more background about how you both got involved with digital organizing and media work and what brings you here today. I'll popcorn it to Minelis.
Actually, it's a very interesting part of the work that we do on a daily basis. I work with a PR firm, communication shop. Previously, I used to be a news producer with several TV stations in Spanish, both in my native Puerto Rico and the United States. So, you know, it kind of flows in a very interesting way because I have to think I have to think as a reporter in a way, but also, how can we reach out to the communities that we want to serve in different ways? So it's been part of the work that I do on a daily basis. Popcorn to Christian.
Thank you, Minelis. Yeah, I started as a activist at the Colorado Immigrant Rights Coalition back in 2017. I was, I was trying to go to med school, and so I didn't really have any experience with social media or even earned media. And so I ended up just, I was pretty good at social media just on my own. But then I was able to hone my skills at the Colorado Immigrant Rights Coalition, where we increased, our social media presence by like fourfold in the time that I was there. And so, yeah, nice to see you, Piper. One of my old colleagues from CERC here messaging me. So yeah, we did some good work together, and we're able to use a lot of our social media presence to share our press conferences, get people interested in our rallies, legislative visits, and things like that. So it came out super helpful at the end of the day. And I'm hoping to share some of those lessons here with y'all today.
Thank you for sharing that background. And just to quickly answer the icebreaker question, yeah, similarly, I have been previously involved in a lot of other campaigns, organizing, doing canvassing, phone banking, that kind of stuff. And then through, just kind of agreeing to do whatever, I ended up kind of going into the digital communications realm. And it was a lot of trial and error, just kind of like learning on the job. Or learning on the spot, just, through volunteer work. So I think there's a lot of different routes that people can take to get into this work. So sometimes technology can feel overwhelming, but, we all start somewhere, and that's the really important part. So yeah, kind of going into that. And then moving into the first question and icebreaker is, why is digital organizing important for refugee and immigrant communities? So if folks want to, feel free to drop any responses in the chat or unmute and provide their insights about why digital organizing is important for our communities. I heard someone unmute. If anyone wants to share why they think this is an important tool or resource, or also what brings you here as well, what brings you to this workshop.
So hi, my name is Mariana. I'm talking from Mira Coalition. And I think digital organizing is very important for two reasons. One is that because our communities or clients, they can get information from there in like their language and their culture, like appropriation. And the second reason that I would say, so one for clients, for communities, because of those things, actually, because of we can talk in the way that it's better than in the news, as example, and then people can get information from us directly.
Thank you. Yeah, so for our audience to get the news directly from us, for us to be able to connect with our audiences, our clients, and our community members. Thank you very much for sharing that. And then I also see in the chat is someone says, it's important because this will assist refugees with attaining and gaining access to additional resources available. Yes, that's also true. Being able to share those resources widely, whether that's through social media, email, media, press releases, etc. Some resources are not always provided in person. That is also true. Being able to distribute this information to a much wider platform, being able to target people as well, making sure that they get this information. So people see themselves, refugee and immigrant experiences and analysis are visible to themselves and the larger community to move people to action. That is also true, when we have control of our own platforms, we get to choose which voices we want to elevate, the folks who we want to make sure we have those messages sent out to, and all of that. I see another person in the chat says, give immigrant and refugees a voice when they're not able to speak up in their own homeland. I'm here to learn how I can be supportive to those who needed it more than myself. So yeah, moving beyond just the United States, the web is worldwide. We can share the messages internationally across borders and all of that as well. For refugee and immigrants to be able to network together through digital organizing approaches. That is also true. I'm liking all these responses, and we can go on all day about talking about the different ways that digital organizing is really useful. So folks could please unmute them or mute themselves if they're in a loud space. Thank you, I appreciate it. Okay, so moving on to the next slide, and it's answering this question essentially of why digital organizing is important for our community. So I shared a couple different examples on here. As you can see, we have some of Dreamers and DACA recipients outside of the US Capitol. I did also a couple different ones of Ukraine and the flights from Afghanistan from last year, as folks can recall. And I chose all these screenshots from social media to show how people are bringing visibility to these topics. Being able to have that platform allows you to control what you want to show. I think about the way that these images and social media and digital organizing have been able to make a huge impact in people's lives. Like, for example, I remember with the people who recorded like the flights leaving Afghanistan, that was all over the news. People were sharing it all across social media. People were gaining awareness of what the issue looked like. Similarly, it provides like different insights about what's going on. So as mentioned, it provides us a platform to raise awareness by capturing and sharing our experiences. The examples shown on the slide show that everyday refugees, immigrants, organizers, and advocates, what they encounter, and it allows for other people to see the pieces in their lives. So digital organizing allows us to bring visibility to issues that others in our communities may not normally encounter in their day-to-day lives. So that's just a quick little tidbit about why it's pretty useful for our communities. So moving on to the next slide is we already kind of answered this about how we got involved with digital organizing, but if anyone else with digital organizing experience wants to unmute or share about how they first encountered digital organizing, even if you're not a digital organizer yourself, if you want to provide examples of times that you have seen it in your fields or in your work, feel free to share. I heard someone unmute. If folks are shy, you can also include it in the chat box as well, and I can read them out loud. I can also share a really quick story about, as mentioned, like how I got involved with digital organizing. For me, I grew up in a mixed status household where everyone in my family was constantly doing campaign work. So everyone was always working on different pro-refugee and pro-immigrant initiatives and supporting candidates as well. So I didn't originally anticipate in getting involved with doing digital organizing. I actually first got involved by translating documents from English to Spanish and vice versa, and then being asked, if I could translate things like from social media from English to Spanish, and then including those copies. So that's how I started dipping my toes into digital organizing. And then from there, just kind of agreeing and getting further in.
For the phone.
Oh, sorry, some folks on mute. Okay. Yeah, just a reminder to, just stay on mute, and then if you want to speak, just let me know, and I can pass you the floor. But yeah, kind of just going back to what I was saying, like just kind of dipping my toes and a lot of trial and error, just volunteering, trying things out, going out of my comfort zone. So that's how I personally got involved with digital organizing. And not sure if anyone else wants to share about their experience. If not, I'm gonna pick on Christian really fast. I know that you're a communications director. Do you want to talk about a little bit more about maybe one of the first digital organizing like campaigns that you were involved in?
I mean, it wasn't I mean, I think so. My very first, when I first started, it was 2017, right before DACA was announced, that the Trump administration was going to try to end the program, and so we were hosting this. We're working with a bunch of local organizations to do a walkout here in Denver, Colorado, where I'm based. And we were able to through social media get lots of engagement from people. A lot of our posts went viral. We put one of those Facebook frames up that got like 400,000 uses. And so that ended up getting us a lot of traction. And so we were able to host this massive rally at one of the local universities that ended up getting the second most media attention in the country that day. And so, I think a lot of it ended up being earned media, but also digital organizing and getting people to know that this was happening, about the news, what to do, next steps, where to go, how to find community. And ultimately it helped people, stay in touch with our organizations and keep bringing like a pipeline of leaders into the work. So, I think there's a lot of value to digital organizing, even though a lot of people say like, oh, you can't be like a keyboard warrior or whatever, but I think there's real life consequences and real life impacts that creates relationships and inspires people to keep in the know and keep working toward justice.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing that. And I like that you included the example of like the Facebook frames. I think oftentimes when people think about digital organizing, they might be thinking about something more broad, or I guess folks don't oftentimes associate even like the little things like, creating social media graphics, posting those selfie stories, like anything, that can really engage an audience can be considered digital organizing. And it can look in a lot of different ways. And there's a lot of different tactics that can be used as well. So moving on. Oh, and as mentioned, things that have helped folks become better organizers is, just kind of experimenting, making mistakes. I think a lot of digital organizing is truly, getting out of your comfort zone. And oftentimes I know for myself, and I can also probably say for Chris as well, like we get added to platforms that we've previously have never used, and just kind of like experimenting, trying things out, seeing what works, what doesn't work, or even, trying different types of tactics, seeing what works there and what doesn't work, and then tweaking them out, and then applying that to our overall strategy. Yeah, kind of going forward. And my general question for the folks here attending this is, how has social media and digital organizing helped you in your community? Is there a specific campaign that comes to mind for folks that stands out? Maybe some ways that y'all have gotten involved with your organizations. For example, maybe you did a TikTok, maybe you got a testimony, a press release, etc. Does anyone want to share about some ways that social media and digital organizing has helped you in your communities? Jennifer, I see your hands up.
Yeah, I think it's really, it's helped us be able to show in real time what being involved with our organization looks like. So for example, we've been able to send several immigrant leaders to Washington, D.C. in recent months, and we've turned our social media platforms over to them. And so they're able to show directly, what it means to be meeting with a congressperson, or what it's like to be visiting the nation's capital for the first time as an immigrant, and the impact that can have. And I think that's so much more exciting than listening to me talk about it, or listening to a paid staff person share what impact we can have together. I think it's more activating, more exciting for people. And that's helped bring us other folks who want to do the same work, or who are experiencing the same injustice. I think they see themselves, and then they contact us. We've had several people contact us after seeing those social media spots from our members.
Thank you. Yeah, so like engaging community members I also see in the chat someone says it helps spread accurate information, stand up against prejudice and abusive schemes. So yeah, it can also help our overall narrative work. It can help tell people's personal stories and seen as human instead of statistic. So yeah, kind of further elevating our storytelling work, etc. So I'm gonna move on. I don't want to take up too much time on this section. That way other folks can also go further into detail and provide better overviews. But going forward, so I'm going to actually hand it off to Chris to discuss some things about social media and to provide an overview about some tips and tricks that can help you with your digital organizing.
Thank you so much, Andres. Yeah, we did this training earlier this year. We were asked to kind of keep it a little more simple. So we kind of simplified things down a little bit for y'all. But you know, here's some like basic tricks and tips. So first and foremost, I noticed a lot of different organizations, their handles are different on Instagram, different on Twitter, different on Facebook, and that makes it difficult for your partners to tag you in the long run. And also, you know, the brand consistency doesn't look quite the same. So one of the big changes that I recommend, if you haven't already done this, is to make sure that your handle is the same across all of your platforms, because then it's easier for people to identify your handle with your organization. And on consistency, you know, I think that's the biggest ingredient in social media. You know, consistently posting and not kind of you know, going away for the weekend and forgetting about it. That affects all the algorithms on those social media networks, and it pushes your posts down when you come back on Monday. So before you head out on a weekend, schedule some posts for the weekend, and that'll keep the algorithm kind of pushing your content out a little more effectively for the rest of your week. Another one is to post things that are current to the relevant to the current news cycle, or you know, current issues that are happening that people might already be watching in the news, or community you know, events, things that are happening local to your intended audience. That really helps you know, build engagement, make sure that you're not kind of sounding tone deaf, posting things that aren't really relevant to the current moment. And then in terms of just planning things out, Andres and I, we take like an hour or two every week at the beginning of the week to work on content for that week, or maybe 2 weeks in advance, just to have some content ready to pull whenever we need it. And that helps, you know, ensure that your captions are free of any errors. If you're trying to do something on the fly, oftentimes you forget to double check your spelling or grammar. And so it really helps to have something ready to go ahead of time on a, you know, Google Sheet or Word doc that'll proofread things for you. That really helps. And on that same note, I would recommend getting a scheduling service such as Hootsuite, which is the one that we use, and it allows you to you know, post the same caption, the same graphic, and customize it for every different social media channel. You know, Twitter has a shorter character length than Facebook or Instagram, and Instagram is a little bit more, you know, you use hashtags a little more than you would on Facebook, for example. So I think it's super helpful. It saves you time rather than having to go to every site, post your content, and then customize it. You can do it all in one place and then schedule it ahead of time for the rest of your week, for that weekend. So, you know, that ends up cutting your time. I always like to say every, you know, 10 minutes of planning saves you an hour of work in the long run. So that's a good way to get ahead of that. Next slide, please. So I wanted to kind of give you all some simple tools and just some kind of overview of how to put a post together in case, you know, you're very new to making social media graphics or videos. So we use this tool called canva.com, you know, so you don't have to go into Photoshop or anything like that to create graphics. And Canva has some really, really useful template graphics that you can use and customize to, you know, change the colors to your organizational branding, the font to your organizational branding. Has a lot of stock images that you can have access to and don't have to otherwise pay for it, because stock images can come in really pricey over time. So I would recommend getting an organizational account there. They have some nonprofit discounts that make it really accessible for you to use. and then you can share it with your team. And you know, there's some really great tools on there. You can make GIFs or GIFs, moving graphics that come in really useful, as well as videos. And they have a whole content of template videos or stock footage, as well as some like stock audio that you can use to kind of illustrate your videos. And then I'm going to go through this quick exercise here on how to build a graphic and how to build a caption. In terms of for captioning, you know, it's important to pay attention to your character count. Twitter has the lowest character count of all of the different social media platforms. So that's typically where I start off my captions. And then I move on to a Google Doc. And then you can build different copies for every different social media network. For hashtags, I would recommend you go online and just do a little bit of research. There's some tools online called hashtag analyzers. A lot of them are free. And you can type in something like refugees, and it'll give you analysis of who's using the hashtag, how many times it's been used, and related hashtags, which you can then use to, like, you know, figure out kind of the way that other people in the field are using different hashtags, and you can tag along. And also, you know, if you're doing a specific campaign, it's always great to create your own hashtag, and that gives you some ideas of how other people are structuring their hashtags. And then also something that comes in really important, and on Twitter especially, is tagging journalists. So, you know, you can find a lot of them on their the media outlets that where they're published. Some of their kind of bios have their Twitter handles on there, and it comes in really handy when you're posting a quote from your executive director of something that you know, a press release that you published, and you pull a quote from that, put it on a graphic. You know, tag a journalist or two that you think might be interested in that content, and it'll help uplift that whole press release with, you know, kind of using some social media tactics. So here I wanted to show y'all some quick a quick how-to on how to build a template here. So I'm going to share my screen with y'all really quickly.
Let me know if I need to stop sharing my screen.
Can y'all see mine?
Yes.
Awesome. So can I get a suggestion from the audience? What is a post about something you'd like to share? You know, I'll open up for y'all, but we could always go with a quote graphic that I had mentioned kind of in the previous example. But if you're working on something, share it out, and let's see how we can work on something together.
Cristiano, if I may, Dawood Malikiar with Sherla, Coalition for Human Immigrant Rights, Los Angeles. Been working around, it's a little bit difficult to come up with an idea for the Afghan Adjustment Act. Just wanted to kind of put that out there as an idea, and great stuff, you guys. Thank you so much.
All right, Afghan Adjustment Act. Let's say we're using a petition. I think petitions are really effective online tactic to get people in the know of what's happening, and then sign up. I feel like they're taking some sort of action to help things move forward. So let's say we have a petition that we want to promote. So we can go in here for templates. So let's search petition, and it'll come back with a bunch of samples that you can use. This one seems pretty simple and straightforward, and is already, you know, kind of similar in topic. So, you know, let's pull this template and let's play with it. So first I'd kind of delete the sample graphics here so that we can add our own. Here, maybe I would add our organization. So let's say we are All America. While we're on it, let's change the colors. So we are All America colors. Let's make this green. Maybe let's make this orange. The text orange so that it pops. Let's change the sizing a little bit. These are kind of locked together, so I'm going to ungroup them so I can change the sizing of specific parts. And maybe let's move this down instead. And then let's make this a sign the petition. Let's make it bold so it stands out.
Sign the petition today, maybe?
Yeah. And I'm going to add a background to it so that it pops out. Let's say dark blue, and let's make the font white, and I'm going to make it more square. Now let's find maybe a stock photo. Nope, I searched Afghans and a type of dog breed came up, but maybe we can use this one. Let's see what the description, Afghan woman with colorful attire or something like that. So let's make this bigger to fit kind of the size. And maybe let's move some of these to make more space. Oops, didn't take all of them. So I'm holding Shift here while clicking on them to hold all of them together. And there's our petition. And then we would add like a bit.ly here with the petition. How's this look to y'all? And then we would add the Chirla logo. Let's see this one. And then the Real America logo. So yeah, something like this took just a few minutes to get ready to go, and then you can download it in different sizes, different formats. You could download it as a GIF to like animate it. So we could even animate some of these, something like this, so that you'd get a moving graphic, which comes in useful sometimes to grab people's attention. And then you could even start a little video kind of intro from this as well.
This is awesome. It's extremely helpful. Thank you very much.
Yeah, my pleasure. And I'll share this link here in case you might find it useful. And that way you can, you can use this as a starting point for whatever you might need.
Appreciate it very much. Thank you.
I wanted to ask to share real quick that if you're also considering to do a campaign on this, consider adding some basic facts. It will help you a lot for the journalist and the media to get a little bit of understanding of what it is. Because sometimes we know in the movement, we know what that is, but for media, it's a little bit of a unknown territory. So it will help you a lot. Just consider it.
Yeah, and when you're doing like on Instagram, for example, you could do little swipe right graphics with some stats about the need for it. So you can make this a whole little series, and it kind of you could build it into a little toolkit, right? About passing the petition, about the reasons why people, maybe a story from a directly impacted person or a family member of an impacted person sharing their story. About how this would change their family situation. Things like this seem very for us, we're all in the know, we hear about these things all the time, but there are a lot of people out there that have no idea what's going on in many parts of the world or even at home. So, this can go a long way to change that. So let's create a little, I'm gonna download this graphic here and then we can create a little caption for it. So I'll add it into the, oh goodness, I'm spacing the presentation here so that everyone can take a look.
Let me know if you need me to refresh the page.
Yeah, well, yeah, can y'all see the image that I just added? No. Yeah, mind refreshing it really quickly, Andres? There it is. Okay, and so when creating a caption or even all messaging, I was kind of trained on this framework of value-based messaging. So you start off with a value, you identify the problem, you identify a solution, and then you urge people to take an action, right? Because nobody likes to hear that there's an issue impacting people and there's a solution, but there's nothing to do about it, right? So in this case, let's say like the value is that everyone should be welcome. Problem. Those of you working on the Afghan Adjustment Act, how would you identify the problem in a really succinct, short way?
Lack of information and lack of the importance of the bill, and also getting across that this is right now dealing with the Afghans, but this could be something that other populations can use going forward. So not restricting it to the Afghans, but seeing it as a pathway to everybody, with the Afghan population basically spearheading that. Thank you.
So the way that I see those problems, but so the problem that the bill would fix, right? How do you communicate about that?
I guess raising awareness is the most important thing at this point, being where we are in the process of the Afghan Adjustment Act, and the number of times that it has been attached and sort of rejected. Basically making sure that there is awareness of it and that it gets attached and passed, because it won't do anything. It's not a standalone bill, unfortunately.
So let's say maybe, so if we're kind of contrasting it to the value, right? We want the problem to directly contrast, everyone should be welcome here, but Afghans are still having issues making it to the US, and many to be with families in the US. Do you think, then the Afghan Adjustment Act would make it easier for people to reunite with their families?
Absolutely, very well put. Not to mention the stress and strain it's going to take off the system.
And yeah, and streamline the immigration system. So then we basically have a structure for our caption here. The action is sign our petition today and urge urge Congress to pass the Afghan Adjustment Act.
Right.
And then we just put the bit.ly that I just made up. So I'm going to move this up so that we can kind of get a full look and move some of this out of the way. So now we just trim kind of the edges to make it one cohesive message. And I put the solution into the next kind of part of the caption. And there's your caption. What does everyone think? Is there anything that we could change here? Anything that we could, maybe clear up, tighten up?
I see there's a question in the chat about how we can create a bit.ly, or how does one create a bit.ly?
Oh, good question. So let me share my screen here really briefly. So Bitly is this service that shortens long URLs into small ones so that you can then share those on social media and not take up all of your space for Twitter, for example, because it's a small character count. But it also comes in really useful to keep track of how many people are clicking on certain links, and then it also provides some information on, like, you know, when people are clicking on them, where they're clicking from, and their locations. So, you know, provide some insight on your audience and their behavior. So we have a professional version of it, but they do have a free version of this that you can sign up for yourself. Ours, you know, we got a professional version, and so then we're able to have a custom shortened link. So it's npna.info. Always worth, you know, just in terms of getting your name out there and your branding. I think it's worth it, and it's pretty inexpensive. So then when you have one of these shortened links, you can click it and it'll take you to the longer link up here. So it saves character count and then provides some analytics on the back end.
I'm gonna share my screen real fast, but I see there's some questions in the chat.
Yeah, so back to the caption. So yeah, I see some comments. Lisa, you're asking about tightening the verbiage, dropping any unnecessary and redundant words. Yep, yeah, that's always really great, you know, just to tighten it up a little bit. Also saves you some character counts. Let's see, what can we tighten here? Maybe that word is a little unnecessary. Maybe we can, if there's I'm not sure if there's maybe a shortened version of the bill, and then we could plug it in here instead. Then maybe the and becomes an ampersand, just to save a little bit of space on Twitter. All right. So I also like to put it into Twitter and just see what the character count is. This one's a little bit short, I mean, a little bit long for it, so we would have to trim up a little bit. But, you know, I think it's a good starting point that you can then kind of, you know, tighten up a little bit. Maybe this part could be removed and then it would fit on Twitter. Oops, excuse me. So yeah, any other questions here?
And we can go over I see the question about the do's and don'ts. We can go over that during the Q&A section towards the end, since we also have some email rapid response and media tips.
Awesome. So yeah, then my last section is the toolkits. So let's say we were creating a whole series for the Afghan Adjustment Act that includes a graphic on signing the petition, maybe a couple graphics on statistics, how many people will be impacted by it, how many people are being impacted by the lack of legislation, and then a personal testimony, right? Like those will all be very compelling sections of a social media toolkit that you can then just put on one document and make it really easy to share with your colleagues, with other organizations, so everyone can get to using these, you know, resources that we're creating, right? So here we have kind of an overview of the anatomy of a toolkit. Usually comes with a quick introduction, So in this example, we're using an excerpt from a toolkit that Andres put together, where we are all America. And so the goal of this toolkit was to communicate some of the profiles of people that are impacted by the scholarship that We Are All America granted. So, it just gives a quick overview. This year, We Are All America has partnered with the New American Youth Leadership Council program to engage young people to further develop their advocacy skills. And we, Andres created these graphics that, has a beautiful picture of one of the grantees, highlights, what the purpose of the graphic is, the scholarship awardee, and a quick congratulations. It has all the major important information that you need on a graphic. You don't want to overload it with text because it's people are less likely to read through it. And then so some social media networks will downrate it in their algorithm. So you won't get as much traction out of it if you have too much text on there. So the name of the recipient, and then a, kind of their title. In this case, they're a scholar with the New American Youth Leadership Council. And then, as always, it's great to have your contact info at the bottom. So in this case, we have We Are All America. And a quick caption, in this case, we're sharing a testimony from the student. So, kind of like a profile of the student, rather. So, this would be one among a series of these graphics. And that way you make it really easy for you or your partners to just, download the graphic, copy the template, maybe customize it a little bit to change it into your own organization's voice, and, makes it really easy to share out. Others, social media toolkits that are intended for specific campaigns or just are larger, or supposed to tie into larger narrative online. We recommend using hashtags. So, maybe on this one, we could have put in a hashtag for NALAC, the New American Youth Leadership Council, just to help keep track of any posts related to that topic online. And then I think NALAC has a Instagram page, so we could have included their social media handle there as well. And so, yeah, I see your point on, or your question here, Haneen, about the best way to share these toolkits. Yeah, I agree with Andres here. Definitely a shared Google document, I think, is the most accessible because you can share it online, change the settings of how people view it, and you can always update it on the go. So if anything, changes, or you need to change anything for whatever reason, you can change it, and anyone accessing that toolkit will get an update rather than downloading it as a Word document and sending it out. That once it's downloaded, it's set that way until you send a new update, and people might not even see it. So if you have one link to the toolkit, you can always update it. It'll always be up to date and accessible for anyone who might need it. And then they can always ask questions or add comments on there that can help you improve it. And yeah, any questions here? All right. Well, thank you all so much. That's my section. I'll hand it back to you, Andres.
Thank you. Yeah, so thank you for going over toolkits, and we kind of touched briefly about, ways to share toolkits. And so that kind of brings me to the next part, which is about emails. People seem to be kind of knowledgeable more about emails, so I'm just going to keep this part short. And bringing up the point that people mentioned about Bitly, yes, sometimes depending on the links that you use, it can be flagged as spam. The way that I actually go around the Bitly issue is having the Bitly in the graphic, but not in the actual document itself, and then just having the long URL. So just kind of addressing that question that was brought up. Some general best practices that I just want to go over is making sure that your emails are brief. People typically don't want to spend a lot of time reading them. They kind of like to skim, pick out the main points, think of it more as kind of like a general outline. So just keep them nice and easy and straight to the point. Also, personalizing your emails, being able to share more of, like, for example, like the behind the scenes of what your organization is doing. Sometimes people like to see, you know, more of like the face behind the campaign and all of that. And also a really big one is make sure that you always have people's consent to send emails before automatically enrolling them. You can actually get put on a compliance spam list. And so then when you send out future emails, they're not going to reach the intended targets. So just putting that one as a heads up, you really don't want to be put on a spam, like, uncompliant list or anything like that. Another thing as well is, you know, write casually, write how you would normally talk. Of course, I understand, you know, we have a lot of political jargon, we have a lot of words that we use, and not saying to, you know, remove any of that, but still try to make sure that it's easy to read. We don't want to make it, you know, too confusing for folks. Think about, especially with emails, it's going to go to a broad audience, especially if we're talking about like listservs, it can go to different organizations and people who have knowledge on different topics. So just keeping all these things in mind. And something that makes things also interesting is just having a catchy subject line to encourage people to open your emails up. You know, sometimes if it's just, you know, something that's very bland, you know, it doesn't really catch my attention as much, but sometimes I notice people who will put like questions or sometimes emojis, and sometimes in my inbox that stands out the most. So, you know, also kind of putting yourself in the perspective of your audience, of, you know, when you open up your inbox and your email, like what stands out to you, what comes to mind. So, you know, just keeping things nice and short, making sure that everything is spam compliant. And yeah, just kind of going over those main things. And yeah, I know this is a really kind of like brief overview of the email section, but a lot of us already kind of send out emails typically. So it's kind of a similar process, but again, just kind of reiterating the point, just keep them brief and include the main points, and you should be good. And that kind of brings me also to my next point about like rapid response. So folks may be familiar with rapid response, especially when it comes to toolkits, you know, or getting those last minute emails about the breaking news that's going on. So rapid response oftentimes is related around breaking news or things that are really pressing in the time, and we need to get things out fast. Sometimes the question that I get the most is, you know, how do you prepare for rapid response? Because it's true, we don't always know when there's going to be news that, you know, comes out or what time, or, you know, things like that, but sometimes we can prepare ahead of time. So for example, let's say, you know, every single year we have World Refugee Day in June. So I'm aware about that we have World Refugee Day in June. I'm not sure about, you know, maybe there's going to be a local proclamation or something. But some things that I can do is like start a press release ahead of time and have that drafted, you know, ahead of time. That way I can make quick edits, you know, the day of. That way when the news does break or the news does go out, I can just easily go into my Google Doc, make those changes and have all of that on there as well. Another helpful tip is collect testimonies ahead of time. I know sometimes this can be the biggest challenge, especially for digital organizers, is getting people to send their testimonies in time. And, you know, just the way that you can do this is, for example, going back to the example of World Refugee Day, if I know that World Refugee Day is always going to be in June, then, you know, reaching out to people ahead of time, even if it's like a month or two beforehand, and saying, you know, hey, like if there's this news coming out about World Refugee Day, like, can you promise me that, you know, you will send in your quote, or also collecting their quotes ahead of time and then getting their consent to do edits, you know, as you see fit, and then just getting the last minute, you know, like, okay, before you add it to or send it out to the press, that kind of things. Sometimes having those quotes or testimonies can be really helpful. And then also sometimes we have talking points based on likely scenarios that, you know, you can share with your team before an interview. So sometimes, for example, let's say that there's some policy news that we're expecting and we either know can be positive or negative. So, you know, kind of anticipating for both results and having those things prepared ahead of time. And then that way, you know, as soon as you hear the news, you can go out, send those talking points out to your team, or even debrief your team beforehand, before the news. That way everyone has access to these materials and, you know, knows what to say. Lastly, something that I also want to talk about is having templates on hand is going to be super helpful. I personally have templates for press statements, media advisories, toolkits, things of that nature. And, having just the overall skeleton sometimes can make things just go much faster. So sometimes just, creating those things with your organization's name, your logo, contact information, things that that are typically consistent, can also just, help you save time, especially when it comes to rapid response, and you're always going to be limited time with rapid response. So these are just some ways that you can prep ahead of time that might be useful. And yes, there will be the slide deck will be shared with everyone. So there's more to say about rapid response, and I'm actually going to pass it off to Menelis, because this kind of goes into more of the media portion and talking more about press statements and media advisories.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you, Andres, for that. So when sharing about the media, what you need to know is that the basics are 3 types of press materials, but each one serves a different purpose. It's a press advisory, a press statement, and a press release. Let's start with the advisory. The purpose of a press advisory is to invite the media to do news coverage of an announcement or event. It needs to be presented in a clear and simple way. It's not a paper for college or nothing like that. It has to be very concise, and it's recommended to at least be 1 page. Try not to be more than that. Not necessarily requires quotes from the organization or a spokesperson, although you can add one very simple quote. And what you need to know is that a press advisory needs to answer the 5 W's. What is the event? Why are you having this event? Who is going to be attending? When is it going to be? The where, which I highly recommend that you add a Google Map link to it. Not everybody knows how to get to places, but also the how. How is this going to impact the community or the refugees in your area? Or how is this going to advance the advocacy that you're doing? So those are the main questions that you would like to answer in a press advisory. But let me tell you, you are going to email this to a media outlet or media outlets in your area. In a newsroom, they receive hundreds of these per day. The lengthier your document, the less chances it has to be read by the people who make the decisions on who's going to cover or when they're going to cover one of those events. You most likely are competing with other things that are happening in your community. The lengthier the document, the less chances you have, because they have too many things happening and they have to make very quick decisions. So be concise but to the point, and have information that is relevant for the news coverage and the decision making in a newsroom. Okay, I can answer some more questions about this. Can I have the next slide, please? You will also have the press statement. The purpose of a press statement is to communicate in a very clear and direct way the views or stance of your organization about a specific situation, not 3, not 4, one specific situation. It must have at least 1 or no more than 2 quotes from a key leader of the organization. The quote needs to be a clear argument that answers what, why, who, and how, depending on the situation, and include a concrete call to action. It is recommended to be short, no more than 1 page and a half. So that means that if there is a, let's say, they passed the Afghan Act, the Adjustment Act. Okay, so this is a statement that you want to immediate response that you want to push out to the media. You can do a press statement, something quick, something concise, expressing what is the opinion, what is the reaction of your organization on this specific event, and then you can later provide a much broader press release about it. So this, for the purpose of rapid response, a press statement would be recommended in that case. Then you have a press release. Its purpose is to communicate in a very clear way a summary of an event, plan, information, or news about an entity, group, or organization. It will always represent the philosophy and values of your organization. It must have at least 2 quotes from key leaders of your organization. And of course, the quote needs to answer the 5 W's: what, why, who, when, where, and how, and include a concrete call to action. It is recommended to be no more than 2 pages. Sometimes it has to be a little lengthier because you are working in a coalition, and then for internal purposes, you want to make everybody to have a voice in your press release. I understand. But the lengthier the document, the less chances you're going to get to be, considered in the coverage or included in the, article, the news article that is going to be written about this important message that you have. So you have to be very, very mindful about that because, again, the media has a lot of press releases, a lot of press statements that they're flooding their emails. So we have to be mindful of that in order to stand out and be selected. And of course, you need to also build a very good relationship with the media and be able to, put a call and say, hey, Christian, I'm going to be sharing a press statement soon. I just wanted you to know, be on the lookout. It's going to be out in the next 20 minutes. So that at least gives a sense of, this is coming. I'm going to save a spot for this organization because I think that their voice is going to be very relevant for the article that I'm writing. Next slide. Best practices. All press materials should be communicated with clarity. If you read it or somebody in your organization gives you like a second read and it's not clear, then you have to go back to your drawing board and make sure that you are clear about the messaging that you have, but it also needs to be concise. If it takes you 2 paragraphs to explain one idea, then there is something a little not good about the messaging that you have. You have to try to understand it yourself, or the people who are writing, understanding in a very clear and simple way in order to communicate with others. If it's too complicated, the chances for coverage are less. They need to be relevant, and of course, they need to be truthful. If you don't have the information, you don't have links to verify the information that you are putting in there in that press release, think about it again, because most likely reporters will want to know, where did you get those statistics? Where did you get those figures? So what are you going to answer to the media? So you need to have that information handy as well. It needs to have correct and simple language, because if it's not written properly, the reporter is not really gonna prioritize on that. And I mean correct English or the language of your preference. It should always try to focus in one main topic. All right. And ideally, they should present a problem and a solution or call to action. I have included in this last question, when and how to use press materials. That's a link that you can just go and see more details on when to use what. Next one. What do you need to know? You can post your press materials to social media in various forms. The press release advisory, you can post it depending on the platform that you're using. For instance, if you have MailChimp or you have Constant Contact, they provide the ability, a tool for you to click on the messaging that you have or the document that you have and post it directly to your social media, especially Twitter. Or you can just use as a quote from that press statement or from the press release and do a quote card, something very similar to what Christian shared with us. So you can have a quote directly to your social media, and that will actually help transmit your messaging, but also catch the eye of the media. Or you can do a selfie video. And people who know me, they know that I am a very big advocate about a selfie video, because it adds a little bit of more drama, adds a little bit more of connection, human connection with your viewers, your audience, but also with reporters. They want to see real people. This is when the testimonials that Andres was mentioning really, really are very convenient, because for a reporter, a story without a voice or a person is just a paper. It's just a, not that important, but they need to show somebody that is affected by a problem, or can have a voice, or is reacting to the problem or a situation, or even an event. Okay, so a selfie video not only would serve the purpose of your social media strategy, but also call the attention of the media. Always uplift your media coverage. Like if you get published, or you got an interview with ABC, then make sure that you post it in your social media, but also tag reporters or the media outlets that you want to continue following your communications. Sometimes we've been asked, or we have been published opinion articles, as they're called, op-eds, but they are not press releases or an advertisement. Op-eds are very specific opinion pieces that are published about a topic. If you get published an op-ed, it's okay for you to uplift, but don't confuse it as a media material that you can send out, because it's very different. An e-blast is not a press release, but sometimes the information there could be used to generate interest in the media. So when you have that kind of information, think about the multi-purpose that it can serve. Just two more reminders. The job of a journalist is to communicate information to the public. Treat them with respect and mind their tight deadlines. If you get a request for a reporter from a reporter, and you need to ask, what is your deadline? So the person will tell you, I have to turn in my story by 1 p.m. Make sure that you have an answer before 1 p.m., not at 1 p.m., before 1 p.m. And if you cannot, or somebody in your organization cannot make it, just be clear and say, I'm sorry, this time we are not able to help you with this. Let me see if I can work out something better for later today, tomorrow. And even if you know that the deadline is 1 p.m., at least the reporter will know that you're open to continue working with her or him or them. In order to maximize news coverage of an event, make sure that you send your press advisory to the media with a few days in advance. The only exception are breaking news. I just added a good example here, from a recent example from NPNA, that they were uplifting this piece about brown wave, a record number of South Asian Americans register historic wins in states, Senate and Assembly races. So this is a very good example on how to diligently highlight materials that have been published in the press. Next slide. I have here a very simple sample of a press release. For those of you who already know how to do it, this is just a little bit of a refresher. For those of you that have never done it, this is just a very simple pointer about how to do a press release. If you're not really the person writing this, just bear with me for a moment. But I wanted to at least run over what are the main parts of the press release so that you're aware. It always would have a header. It has for immediate release and the date. That's very important, because if it's too old, it's not gonna be considered for the media. And then who's the person, who's the contact? Information that needs to be there is phone number, but also email. Then you also have a title, sometimes even a subtitle that is catchy, but is also summarizing what is the press release about. Okay. It comes with a locator, has to be, where is this press release generated? or who's going to be impacted. Sometimes instead of Washington, D.C., for instance, could be nationwide, meaning that this is supposed to be spread nationwide, or maybe this is something that you want for Orlando, Florida only. So you have to make sure that you have the proper locator there. Then the first paragraph is the lead and should try to have references. My experience is that your lead is the one paragraph that reporters are going to read and determine whether they're going to continue reading the information or cover your information or your event. And because of that, you have to make sure that you have as much information, but as simple as you can, so that you can catch the eye of the reporter or the editor of the newspaper or the publication. So in this case, you see this is an example from NPNA. It has the main idea, it has some references. So if the reporter stops reading at the end of that paragraph, he or she or them know already what this press release is going to be about. Then paragraph number 2 would be some additional background that amplifies on the first one. Can I please have the next slide? The third paragraph should be context and references. You can add links as you can, as many as you can, that it would amplify the information that you have. Then you will have a quote. Sometimes you can end your press release with a quote or a second quote. This is a very simple example. Just for the sake of time, I'm not going into further details, but just so you have an idea of how it looks. And then you should have always, always, always a boilerplate, which is one simple paragraph and the website information about your organization. Why? Because probably the reporter who is just starting to work with that newspaper that week doesn't really know about your organization. So at least he or she or them, they have an opportunity to get to know a little bit more about the work that you do. Just leaving it here. I'm open for questions. Passing on to you, Andres.
Thank you. And I know that there are several folks in the chat that had questions. So now's your time, if your question didn't get answered, to bring it up, and we'll take some time to answer them. I know someone mentioned earlier the top 5 best practices and top 3 don't do that, that you've learned the hard way. Does anyone want to take that? Any of the facilitators? I can tell you, at least for one of my best practices, at least, or also kind of like don't do that, things I've learned the hard way, is make sure you always do like a draft and also a test run. Like this is in reference to like one, like proofreading, like toolkits, make sure you're putting it through a grammar checker. And then also with like emails, like making sure that you do a test run. Like sometimes it'll look good on your end, but then you forward to someone or you do something else and then it starts looking kind of wonky. So, just kind of make sure that you're always proofreading, and like actually taking the time to proofread. Sometimes like, you might share it out with your team and everyone might be running fast, especially during rapid response mode where, people are working on a billion things at once and they might, just kind of skim it and be like, that looks amazing, but then miss like all the, grammar errors in between. So, just take the extra time and make sure that you're proofreading, using drafts. Don't ever kind of put things directly into like either an email platform or, straight into the social media, like right on. Make sure you're having things in a draft.
Yeah, and to add on to that, also something that really helped me was reading everything out loud. Because when you read things like in your mind, sometimes like you might miss a the or a in or just, a little random word that clarifies things. And when you're reading it, your brain kind of autofills those words. And so reading it out loud forces you to verbalize them and listen back to it. And then you can catch little things that you might have missed before.
On that same note, 2 things to say. When you're reading it out loud, you realize that you might be able to use words that are less long right? That it saves you space for Twitter, but also that are more dynamic. Sometimes we have certain words that are too scholarly, right? And so we want to make sure that we keep it very, very informal on the best way of putting it, something that is more colloquial so that people can connect. If you use too high of a word, sometimes it just breaks the rhythm with your audience. But then the other thing is that when you're reading it out loud, you also kind of like get more ideas on how to do this on a video. Sometimes there is an opportunity there that you say, wait a minute, I can get so and so and so to get me a selfie video on this. And then so you amplify the opportunities on how to say the same through several people and then several voices, and you give more participation to the members of your organization. And ultimately, like I said, media wants to see that it's not your only audience. Media is not your only audience, but it helps amplify the messaging that you have.
And I see a question by Anna about what considerations are being given to other platforms. Should Twitter shut down? Right now, basically the best practices and recommendations about like moving forward with everything that's happening in Twitter wise is archive all your information if you can on Twitter. I believe that you can request that information, and that might be a little bit more advanced, but if you can have like an archive of kind of your top tweets, that kind of material, make sure you go ahead and do that. The second thing is, kind of continue having your account right now, like as normal. Don't just delete things just because it seems like things are crumbling, because you might lose all those followers, all that data as well. So continue, keeping your account up as long as possible. And I know that there's other platforms that people are right now like suggesting. Nothing has been really solidified about that, but I would also say, expand your horizons beyond Twitter. Also, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Those are all platforms that you can have a social media presence on. And yeah, I see the America's Voice Twitter meltdown. Yeah, it's a to-do list. Thank you for sharing that as well. But yeah, kind of just going over that, just continue as normal. Make sure you archive things as much as you can, and look into your other platforms, and moving also your like followers and all other folks, collecting their information and having that like solidified somewhere else. So encouraging them to move to email, or encouraging them to follow you, for example, on Facebook or Instagram, etc.
Andres, I would like to address two questions that I see here from Catherine. Does it make any difference if you hand deliver the press announcement? Yes and no. Unfortunately, sometimes people like to do the copy and paste. So when you hand deliver, you can't do that. So if you could send it out to your media list, that'll be fantastic, especially because of the links for information, the background information. It helps a whole lot. And then the other thing, sometimes it's not a bad idea on an event that you have some hard copies of your press release. It's not a bad idea, because sometimes they don't catch, reporters don't catch certain things or have certain questions on background. So having it there, it helps so that they can ask the right questions to your spokesperson. So yes and no. I don't recommend that you carry 50 copies of your press release unless it's a major announcement, but at least 10, 8. So in case that some reporters will ask you, but likely you're gonna be carrying some of those back at home. The other question that I wanted to address is from Farah. Any ways that we would recommend persuading team members to do a selfie video? Trust me, everybody's shy to a certain extent. The thing that I recommend is for you to have sessions with them. Practice makes perfection. And let me tell you, my very, very golden rule for everybody: practice in front of the mirror, because that way most of people, it's not that they're not shy, it's just that they are a little mindful about how they talk, about how they look, etc. So practice in front of the mirror so you get a little bit more comfortable on your own skin and it comes out a little more natural. you will be surprised how they, like a very funny TikTok video, they do perfectly, but then when it comes to a quote, they have a hard time. So the more they practice, the better. That would be my 2 cents on that. Maybe Andres and Christian have a little bit more of an advice on that.
Yeah, I would say like from the perspective of working with like refugee and immigrant communities, something that I've noticed that is like really helpful sometimes is having a script. So it can be something like hi, like insert name here, something kind of more straightforward that people can read off of. Or also like, for example, in toolkits, just having like talking points of like, here are the main points. I remember during I want to say, oh my God, National Refugee Advocacy Days, we actually had like 3 separate prompts that people could say. So it was a couple sentences that anyone could say, but then it was also like, we had like a couple sentences that anyone could say, but also things that people can add. So like adding on their personal story. That way, we at least have the selfie video. And then if we have people who are a little bit more confident, then they can share a bit more details. But yeah, I think having things that are written out ahead of time can be really helpful, especially for folks who may have like language barriers or, who may want to rehearse or practice a couple times, or who may be nervous about the policy aspect of things. That can be really helpful.
Yeah, in addition to writing out a script for someone, I think sometimes it helps to just practice it together or even do a screen share. You could do like a Zoom and you ask them questions so they don't feel like they're just talking at a camera. They can talk to you and you can record that and clip just the answers. So that can come in really handy, especially for people that are like, they feel awkward on their own, and you can give them some direction as they're going through it. And that way they feel more comfortable with it as time goes on.
Yeah, for sure. I would also say sometimes it's helpful, especially as like, the main point of contact as a communication specialist. If you yourself, also kind of create a selfie video, sometimes I know I can be a hypocrite myself as well, or I'll be like, okay, guys, submit your selfie videos, but I'm also kind of shy. I don't want to be on camera. So, well, I also noticed just kind of like participating, joining in, also having that like those examples. I think sometimes people maybe a little bit worried about like what folks are asking, and then once they see an example, they feel more confident or more comfortable, and they know that they're not alone in that, so they're more likely to respond as well.
Any
Are
more
there
questions for us?
If there aren't any more questions, then what we can do is we'll be sending out this recording. There's going to be a follow-up email sent to your inbox. It's going to contain, as mentioned, the recording, the slides, and you can always feel free to send in any questions as well. I also want to remind people that because this is going to be our last workshop officially of the year, you'll be receiving a survey form shortly in the upcoming weeks about just sort of feedback about how these trainings have been going. And if you like this training, then make sure, you include that in the feedback form and, request it. You can also ask us to include anything for next time, or bringing up different topics, etc. I see one last question about any additional tips on how to grow social media channels.
Yeah, I think one big one is to cross promote your different channels. So let's say you put a little Twitter thread on Twitter. You can take screenshots of that and make it into a little series on Instagram, and it'll help people that might follow you on Instagram but not on Twitter to realize that you're on Twitter and go follow you there. I think any in-person events, I would just give out a shout out, like, stay connected with us, here's our handle. And that's where having the same handle across all your channels makes it really helpful, because then they can search that and all of your social media channels come up. And then if you're an organization that's like, works with other organizations, I think cross promoting between each other's channels helps a lot. Here, Andres and I, we run the We're All America. social media, the NPNA social media, and then the National Immigrant Inclusion Conference social media. So we try to cross promote some content from each to the other so that some of those audiences, you know, mix and like the other pages as well.
Yeah, yeah, kind of going off of that. The other thing that I would say is like focusing on an account that you want to grow and expand on can be really helpful. So for example, something that I've done with We All America before, I've grown the Instagram page from like 0 to I think we're over 700 or 800 about there right now. So originally what I did was like in the beginning of the year, I would focus or narrow in on just one social media account that I just really want to see like expand and grow. So all of them are gonna be, you know, receiving, they're still gonna be posted and all these things, but there's one that's gonna receive a little bit of special attention, basically. So for me, that has been kind of Instagram. So as soon as I got my Twitter goal to where I wanted it to be, I kind of invested in Instagram, making sure that I posted, you know, at least once a week, posting engaging content, and then trying to post things such as like videos, tagging people, and keeping up to date with like best practices and things that help with engagement. So sometimes it's kind of like prioritizing that one platform that you really want to like grow and invest in can be helpful. And then from there on, you know, once they're in a good, secure place, then just kind of maintaining that.
I would also say provide some variety of contents. Not everything should just be, you know, flat like a quote card or just something flat. Try to do interactive stuff, mix videos, mix interactive posting, do stuff that it's a little out of the box every now and then. It will actually provide some diversity of content and that people like really, really good.
To answer the last question about like growth, so I don't watch any like specific like YouTube tutorials, but something that I would say is like Sprout Social specifically. They have a blog. I really recommend looking into Sprout Social. They have a lot of really good guides on there as well. Also looking into like Hootsuite and any of those like really big like brands that do like scheduling stuff. They oftentimes will collect a lot of the research for you ahead and just kind of present it out. So, you know, just kind of doing a Google search of like XYZ, you know, social media channel, Hootsuite, those kind of blogs will come up. And I think we went through all the questions found today. Awesome. Thank you. So I appreciate everyone coming here. And as mentioned, check out your inbox for that email and also for the follow-up survey regarding the series. So thank you so much, everyone. Bye. Have a good night.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you for the training. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.